The sun had barely crested the downtown Dallas skyline, but the streets were already humming with life. Cars whooshed past office buildings. Business people walked briskly, coffee in hand. But in the narrow alley behind the prestigious Andrea's fine dining, a different rhythm unfolded. A delivery truck idled quietly as Elijah Reynolds, dressed in a plain gray uniform and black cap, stepped down from the driver's seat. He moved with unhurried precision, his face calm but focused. In his hands, a clipboard with invoices and a checklist. In his cart, boxes of imported seafood and organic vegetables. Elijah wasn't the type to draw attention. He never needed to. With years of experience behind him, he understood the dignity in silence and the strength in being underestimated. He wheeled his dolly to the silver-plated rear entrance, where a buzzer blinked red above a keypad. Just as he pressed it, he caught muffled laughter through the metal door. The kind of laughter that didn't welcome. Cold, snide, dismissive. The door creaked open, revealing a young man in a spotless white chef's coat. He looked Elijah up and down, brows narrowing. Behind him, two more staff members peeked over his shoulder, one whispering, the other stifling a chuckle. "Delivery's late," the young chef snapped. Elijah lifted the invoice calmly. "Actually, I'm right on time. Gulf Coast seafood and fresh greens. As ordered." The chef waved a hand without making eye contact. "Just bring it in. Don't block the kitchen." Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Bright chandeliers lit the marbled floors. Gleaming stainless steel appliances shimmered, and every corner exuded luxury. But underneath the polish, Elijah noticed something more corrosive: entitlement. As he navigated his load past the kitchen staff, glances followed him, some amused, others superior. Someone muttered, "Guess they'll let anyone through these days." Another voice added, "Think he'd know better than to dress like that." Elijah ignored them. He'd learned long ago not to waste energy on shallow minds. At the fridge, a woman in a black pantsuit, likely a floor supervisor, brushed past him with a clipped tone. "Make sure you don't scuff the tiles." "Yes, ma'am," Elijah replied evenly. His voice didn't tremble. It never did. By the time he returned for the second load, the whispers had grown louder. As he passed the grill station, one tall chef with a smirk nudged his colleague. "Bet he can't even afford to eat here." Another burst of laughter. Elijah's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in endurance. He'd dealt with worse, but something about today felt heavier. When he entered the kitchen again, Executive Chef Damien stood inspecting the seafood. He lifted a box lid with a sneer. "This the best they could send us? If there's an issue, I can call the supplier," Elijah offered. "No, just drop it off," Damien said curtly, waving him off. "We have real work to do." By the third load, even the waitstaff joined in. One server muttered, "Man, how long's he going to take?" Then came the final straw. Elijah reached for what appeared to be a missed box, but it was empty, a prank. Laughter erupted. One of the kitchen hands grinned. "Gotcha. Thought you knew your job, delivery man." Elijah didn't flinch. He placed the box down silently and finished his task. As he handed the signed invoice to Damien, the chef didn't look up. "You can go now." Elijah nodded. "You all have a good day," he said, stepping toward the exit. Behind him, a server muttered, "Yeah, go back to wherever you came from." Elijah froze. His hand hovered on the doorknob. Slowly he turned. The room hushed. His voice, steady and calm, echoed. "I came here to deliver something you clearly need more than seafood. Respect." Then he walked out. The surprise awaiting them all would arrive much sooner than they imagined. Elijah leaned against the side of his truck, sweat on his brow, the morning sun beating down. But it wasn't the heat that weighed on him. It was the culture he'd witnessed, a culture he'd long hoped this place had grown past. Andrea's. The name shimmered above the front entrance in elegant gold lettering. Just 3 weeks ago, Elijah had signed the final documents. He was now the owner. But Elijah didn't become an owner the usual way. Raised in a small Louisiana town, the son of factory workers, he'd started washing dishes at 16. Every rung he climbed came through grit and grace. Line cook, sous chef, manager. Eventually, he opened his own small bistro. Success didn't make him arrogant. It made him watchful. When the chance came to acquire Andrea's, a place infamous for its snobbery, Elijah took it with a mission. He didn't just want to own a luxury restaurant. He wanted to transform it, elevate the standard not just of cuisine, but of character. And so he watched. That morning's delivery was no accident. He wore the uniform deliberately, because how they treated the lowest revealed more about the place than any five-star review. At 3 p.m. sharp, the entire staff assembled in the main dining hall. Executive Chef Damien stood with arms crossed, clearly annoyed. Servers looked bored. Manager Greg stood by the doorway, visibly nervous. The doors opened. Elijah walked in, still in his delivery uniform. A murmur swept the room. Damien scoffed. "You've got to be kidding." Greg stepped forward. "Elijah, this meeting's for staff only." "I know," Elijah replied gently. "That's why I'm here." Damien rolled his eyes. "If this is about your delivery, we've moved on." "It's not just about a delivery," Elijah said, stepping into the center of the room. "It's about how we treat people." He paused. The room stilled. "My name is Elijah Reynolds. 3 weeks ago, I became the new owner of Bel Andrea's." Gasps. Someone dropped a tray. Damien's eyes widened. Greg's jaw hung open. "That's right," Elijah continued, his tone calm but resolute. "And I've spent the last few hours observing, listening, watching." He turned toward Damien. "You judged me the moment I walked in, not for the quality of my delivery, but because of what I wore." To the staff, "You whispered, laughed, and insulted without knowing who I was. And if I were truly a delivery man, would that make it okay?" The silence was thick, uncomfortable, necessary. "Respect is not reserved for titles," Elijah said. "It should be our default." He scanned the room. Many now looked at the floor. Others flushed with shame. "Starting today, things will change. We will build a culture where every role is valued, where we don't mock those we deem beneath us." He looked at Damien. "You don't have to like me, but you will treat everyone here, from dishwasher to manager, with dignity." For a moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, one of the servers nodded. Another whispered, "I'm sorry." Damien, stiff and awkward, muttered, "I didn't mean—" Elijah raised a hand. "Save it. Words are easy. Change is harder. Show me." He turned to leave, but not before saying one last thing. "The cost of respect is nothing, but its absence, that can cost you everything." The room was frozen, not from the air conditioning, but from what Elijah Reynolds had just revealed. "I am the new owner of Bel Andrea's." Not a word was spoken. Even the constant background noise of the kitchen, clattering pans, timers, footsteps, seemed to still as the staff stood suspended in disbelief. Greg, the manager, was pale. Damien's mouth was slightly ajar, and a server gripped the edge of the table like it might keep her from falling over. Elijah let the silence stretch, not to gloat, but to allow them to feel it. This was the moment. The moment they would remember, not because it was dramatic, but because it revealed something about them, something they could no longer unsee. He took one step forward. "You judged me because of the clothes I wore, because of the job you thought I had, because of the color of my skin." Eyes dropped to the floor. No one dared to meet his gaze. "If I had truly just been a delivery man, would it have been okay to laugh at me, to belittle me, to play pranks? Would my dignity be negotiable just because of my position?" He paused and looked directly at Damien. "I'm not angry, Chef. I'm disappointed." Damien swallowed hard. But before he could reply, Elijah raised a hand to stop him. "This isn't about shaming you. It's about changing us." Then, without waiting for a response, Elijah turned and walked out. 3 days later, the kitchen staff assembled again. This time not by request, but by instinct. Elijah was waiting in the same dining hall. He was no longer wearing his delivery uniform, but a crisp white shirt with rolled sleeves and slacks that matched his quiet confidence. His presence had changed the energy of the room. No one slouched. No one whispered. "I asked you here because I want to give you a second chance," he began, leaning forward slightly. "Not just to work here, but to work together." He pointed to a freshly installed board behind him that read in bold gold letters, "Respect isn't earned by status. It's owed to every human being." The words hit like thunder. Simple, Undeniable, he continued. From now on, we build from that. The same way we season food, prep tables, or clean a stove. We cultivate respect with intention. Then he did something no one expected. He pulled on a navy apron. Today, I'm working the line. You'll find me chopping onions and wiping counters. Not because I have to, but because I never want to forget where I came from. Later that day, Elijah was shoulder to shoulder with Marcus, a young prep cook who'd been in the kitchen just 4 months. At first, Marcus kept nervously glancing over, unsure whether to speak. "You've been here a while?" Elijah asked as he passed the cutting board. "Not really. 4 months," Marcus said. "But long enough to know people don't usually talk to prep cooks." "Then let's change that," Elijah replied. "How'd you get into this line of work?" Marcus blinked. Culinary school. First in my family to go. That's something to be proud of." For the first time that day, Marcus smiled. That evening, Damien stood at the office door, hesitant. He raised a hand to knock, then paused. He took a deep breath and knocked once. "Come in," Elijah said without looking up from his computer. "I owe you an apology," Damien began immediately. "I treated you badly, worse than badly. I assumed things I had no right to assume." Elijah looked at him. "Why?" Damien didn't answer. "I need you to answer that for yourself. And I need you to figure out what kind of leader you want to be in this kitchen. Not just for me, for your team, for yourself." Damien nodded slowly. "I want to try. Trying's a good start." Over the next few weeks, Elijah introduced what he called the Walk in Their Shoes initiative. Each week, one senior staff member would switch roles with a lower-tier employee for a full shift. A sous chef worked dishwashing. A manager shadowed a hostess. The front-of-house director served drinks for an afternoon. The culture began to shift. People stopped seeing each other as categories and started seeing one another as contributors. Compliments began replacing criticism. There was even laughter in the break room. Not the mocking kind Elijah had first heard, but shared joy. One day, a server named Trish taped a handwritten note to the bulletin board. It read, "To Elijah, thanks for reminding us what this place could be. You made me want to come to work again." It wasn't grand, but to Elijah, it was the first proof that the seed had taken root. A month later, Andrea's hosted a charity dinner for youth culinary scholarships. Before the first dish was even served, Elijah stepped to the front of the dining room. All lights dimmed except the one above him. "I stand here today not as a man who built a restaurant," he said, "but as someone who believes restaurants can build people." Applause erupted. He raised a glass. "To respect, to humility, to seeing people as more than uniforms or skin color, to kitchens where every voice matters." After the event, a young woman in a server's uniform approached him quietly. "My brother used to work here," she said. "He quit last year. Said this place made him feel invisible." Elijah nodded. "And you?" "I was scared to apply until I heard about you. I just wanted to say thank you." Elijah placed a hand on her shoulder. "No one should feel invisible, especially not here." A framed quote now hangs at the entrance of Andrea's. "Leadership isn't about titles. It's about lifting others. Every guest, every worker, every day." Underneath, Elijah's old delivery uniform is mounted in a shadow box, not as a novelty, but as a reminder of where this story began and why it must never be forgotten. Dr. Maya Ellington, professor of organizational leadership, said in a widely shared interview, "Elijah didn't just fix a restaurant, he unmasked a culture. What he created at Andrea's should be studied in business schools across the world, not just for its management strategy, but for its human wisdom." He delivered groceries, but what he really delivered was a blueprint for dignity,